Good Thursday morning. Man, what a fantastic morning out there coming over to church from my house. I thought, man, Lord, this is for me one of the optimal mornings of the year. Just a beautiful morning out there. I hope that you're able to enjoy a little bit of it before it gets a little too hot out there today. Please keep safe in the heat. Plans are being finalized for this weekend for the big outdoor worship service at Memorial Park. For those of you who have been uncomfortable in coming back to church to worship within the church building, this is a fantastic way to join your family of believers. Still safely social distancing, but yet being able to worship together. I'm looking forward to it. Please bring your own lawn chair and leave the front spots for those with less mobility. We have some of the members of Sojourner coming. It's possible that Dean Tesh may even come if he's feeling up to it. We also are Dennis and Tony and Tori are going to be singing, and we have some other great things, and as well as the veterans participating. So we hope that you can join us. Also, think about this as an opportunity to invite people that you know who need to hear Jesus. Invite them to this different type of worship service outside in the midst of all this craziness that's going on in the world. Because that's our mission. Our mission is to reach the gospel. We're continuing to hear that. We heard that yesterday. And today, again, I'm going to share with you just a small clip of the message from Sunday. God's blessings as you review this message, and we'll talk to you for a little bit afterwards.
Now, if our mission is from God, and if our mission is for God, there's a third point that logically comes together with that. If it's from God and it's for God, that means it's got to be with God. And we need God to be with us, don't we? Do you realize that we've alluded to the fact that being part of the family of believers in our mission, we've alluded to the fact that we're at war, that this is a battle. We're always in a battle. Do you realize that in the last, historians have calculated that in the last 5,500 years of this earth, there have been only 292 years of peace. In the last 5,500 years, there's only been documented 295 years of peace. That is, that there hasn't been a war. Because there's usually a war somewhere. But that's even wrong. Because from the very moment that Adam and Eve chose to follow Satan, this world has been constantly at war with God. And we are part of that war. We have to remember that. And sometimes Satan lulls us into a little bit of apathy and indifference. We are at war. Have you thought to yourself at all during these last couple of months, Satan is really waging a war against the church. He's using the pandemic to wage a war against the church. He's using the rioting to wage a war against the church. And if after that there'll be something else, he's going to use everything he possibly can. Now, if our fight is against Satan, and it is, we can't stand there with assault weapons, because that's not going to hurt Satan. What's our battle? How do we battle? The Apostle Paul says this in Ephesians 6. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the schemes of the devil. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the world rulers of this darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Notice it says, our struggle is not against flesh and blood. People in this world are not our enemy. Now, they're used by the enemy at times, but we have to remember that. When we look around our nation and we see people fighting against each other, remember, people around us are not the enemy. They may have been captured by the enemy. They may be instruments of the enemy. But they're not. It's Satan is. And when we remember that, we remember that we use the armor of God. We use God. We need to fight everything against this powerful Satan. We need to fight against with God. And we have to remember that that battle is waging in our hearts. When Jesus came into your heart at your baptism, he claimed your heart as his own. He stuck his flag on your heart, and he said, this heart belongs to me. But Satan doesn't give up that easy. And he's always trying to reclaim your heart. Every one of us has to remind ourselves every day, how is Satan trying to get at me? Now, that doesn't mean that we walk around every day in such fear, because God says never, don't be afraid. But be aware, be sober, be alert. Why? Because he's there. But we have something greater. We have God. Remember what Jesus says at the end of his Great Commission? He says, and surely I'm with you always to the very end of the age. There isn't a day that Jesus isn't with you. Now, if you were reading through the devotions this past week that I sent out, particularly Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, those devotions were based upon a hymn that we sang a couple weeks ago, Lord of All Hopefulness. And that those devotions reminded you of the prayer for God's presence in our lives, in our waking. When we wake up in the morning, Jesus is present. Throughout the labors of the day, Jesus is present. When we come home at night, Jesus is present. When we lay down our heads at night, Jesus is present in our lives, no matter what the battle we face. And brothers and sisters, we can't become apathetic and indifferent and forget. We have to remember every day that Satan is always trying to claim our hearts and the hearts of people around us. But we do not live each day in fear, but we live each day in the confidence that because Jesus sent us on a mission, because our mission is from God, because our mission is for God, number 3, our mission is to fight the spiritual battles with God. So I want you to remember that before we move on to the next part of our message today. I want you to remember our mission is from God, it's for God, and it's with God.
Our mission is from God, it's for God, and it's also with God. Tomorrow we'll continue with the 4th part of this message. But for now, God's blessings on your day. And we pray that God keeps you all safe, and God willing, we'll see you tomorrow.